What is up, guys? It is the Bluebloods here, back with another Week 7 college football preview, and we have the Auburn Tigers traveling to Fayetteville, Arkansas to take on the number 17 Arkansas Razorbacks. The Razorbacks are 4.5-point favorites in a game that kicks off at 11 a.m. Central Time, live on CBS. It's one of these CBS doubleheader weekends, as we also have Georgia and Kentucky following this game on CBS. But this game could not be any more important for the SEC West. Arkansas and Auburn, Auburn has one, Arkansas has two losses in the SEC. And with Alabama dropping a game, that SEC West race is really wide open right now between Bama, Ole Miss, Auburn, Arkansas. All these teams have a shot. A&M even was thrown back into the mix, has a shot at this SEC West crown if they can get hot late in the season. So both of these teams are looking to make their mark. And both of these teams are looking to show that they're a real contender. And this is really a contender-pretender matchup because the loser really falls back into the fray of this tough SEC conference. Now, for storylines, for Arkansas, they come into this matchup at 4-2, and they're looking to rebound after two tough consecutive losses, a shutout loss to Georgia in Sanford Stadium 2 weeks ago, and then a 1-point soul-crushing loss where they missed a 2-point conversion to beat Ole Miss on the road last weekend in Oxford. But they're coming back home. The hype and excitement is still surrounding this Arkansas program. It's at an all-time high, and a lot of people are looking at this game for a chance for the Sam Pittman-led Razorbacks team to get their momentum back and really insert themselves, in the top half of this SEC West division behind KJ Jefferson and this potent running attack that they have. Now, on the other sideline, the Tigers, they come into this matchup at 4-2. Both of their losses are to top 7 teams in the country, and Penn State on the road and Georgia last week in a 34-10 loss. Now, a win this weekend could really set the Tigers up to be an interesting dark horse in the West. Now, a lot of people are counting them out because they're unranked. They've lost 2 games, but their only conference losses to Georgia, and a win here would put them right in the thick of this SEC West race if they can get hot, because they also have Ole Miss coming. If they win that game, Auburn finds themselves in a very, very interesting position. They've already beaten LSU in that SEC West, and their entire SEC West schedule is ahead of them. So this Auburn team needs to win here. This is a chance for Brian Harsin to get his first ranked win as the Auburn head coach. And so this game could not mean more for this Auburn program. Now, looking at the series as a whole, the Tigers lead the series 18-11 over the Razorbacks and have won 7 of the last 8 games in this series and are currently on a 5-game winning streak. But the Razorbacks' last win did come in Fayetteville in a multiple overtime upset over the Tigers back in 2015. So this series has been competitive, but over the past few years, Auburn has dominated this series per se. But let's get into the keys for victory, man. We got to start with the Razorbacks being the ranked team, being the home team. It all lies in the rushing attack for Arkansas. Let's be honest. That's where this team thrives. That's where the Razorbacks make their money, and that's on the ground. They have one of the best rushing offenses in the country. They're averaging over 240 yards per game on the ground and are averaging over 2 touchdowns on the ground per game this season. They've shown an ability to rush on pretty much any defense they've seen outside of Georgia. And I'm going to be honest, I said this on Bryce Coombs' podcast that dropped today. Go check it out on the Crowded Booth. But I said it on his podcast. Georgia, you got to almost take it out as a data point for some of these teams because nobody's really running on Georgia. And this weekend, Arkansas is going to have to do it against a fairly solid Tiger front that's only giving up about 100 yards on the ground per game and only allowing 3 yards per carry this season. So that's going to be the key for them. You look at Traylon Smith at running back, almost 400 yards rushing, 4 touchdowns, averaging over 5 yards per carry. Now, Raheem Sanders is another guy to watch. He's averaging over 6 yards per carry. And then you also got to look at that third rotational piece in Dominique Johnson, averaging over 6.5 yards per carry, 3 rushing touchdowns. all three of these guys have to be dynamic, they have to be explosive, and they have to be consistent. I think what you're going to see is Arkansas utilize a strategy similar to what they used against Texas, where on the defensive side of the ball, they're going to try to make Auburn one dimensional and make and put that game on Bo Nix. But on the offensive side, they are just going to pound it and pound it and pound it. And then after Auburn loads the box, KJ Jefferson is going to have some opportunity to go up over the top and make some plays with his arm. Now, you also have to watch KJ Jefferson on the ground. That's really the X factor this weekend because Auburn really hasn't been tested by a true talented dual threat quarterback this season. He has over 300 yards rushing, 5 rushing touchdowns, and averages over 5 yards per carry. And he is a load and a matchup nightmare in the open field because he can run you over, he can make you miss, and he is just an overall playmaker. So, can the Auburn defensive line and linebackers play disciplined, smart football and keep Jefferson contained in the pocket and not let him hurt this defense with his legs? That's going to be another key for Arkansas this weekend, is to let Jefferson be a playmaker. If Jefferson can replicate his performance from last weekend, where he threw for over 300 yards and almost led Arkansas to the big win, that could really signal trouble for this Auburn defense. Now, you look at what he has to do. He has to avoid turnovers. He has to be efficient, but he's going up against an Auburn secondary that has struggled at times to stop opposing quarterbacks. Opposing quarterbacks are completing almost 70% of their passes on this Auburn team. Stetson Bennett had a big weekend last week, and even Max Johnson early in that LSU game found a way to do it big. And so did Sean Clifford, only missing 4 passes in Penn State's win over Auburn back in week 3. Now, Jefferson is completing over 62% of his passes, over 1,200 yards, 9 touchdowns, 3 picks, and he does it over the deep to intermediate range passes, so like 10 to 20 plus yards down the field. And for on his deep passes, he has a 91.8 passing grade by Pro Football Focus's advanced analytic team. When he can hit on those deep passes, that's when KJ Jefferson is his most dynamic, most explosive, and really can put pressure on the back end of a defense. And when you look at what Arkansas has to do, if they can keep Jefferson clean, the Tigers could be in some real trouble. And Jefferson is going to have to make play after play, whether it be with his arm or whether it be outside the pocket, just playing smart, disciplined football. And so for me, the key is first the running game, and then second, can Jefferson be the playmaker that we ultimately know he can be for this Arkansas offense? Now, on the flip side, we got the Auburn Tigers, and as much as I hate picking, similar keys for these teams, both of these teams are run first teams. And when you look at this matchup, the Tigers are also going to have to rush to football to match what Arkansas is going to try to do with their offense. And when you look at the blueprint on the teams that have beaten Arkansas in Georgia and Ole Miss, you have to run the football. Ole Miss with Snoop Connor and Paris Jr. absolutely had big days. And then you look at the 4-man rotation that Georgia used against Arkansas, controlling the line of scrimmage. So you've got to try to replicate that blueprint with your running attack and those talented running backs that the Tigers have on this team. Now, they're rushing for over 200 yards per game already, over 6 yards per carry, and over 2 touchdowns a game, similar to Arkansas. But the difference is they have a game changer at running back in Tank Bigsby, arguably one of the best, probably a top 2 or 3 running back in the country coming into this year. He was there was rumors he was banged up between LSU and Georgia State. Or this is the game where Bigsby's going to have a big performance. He's rushed for over 450 on the ground this year, 5.5 yards per carry, and 5 touchdowns. He had a big touchdown against Georgia last weekend. And then Jarquez Hunter, the true freshman that has really just exploded out of nowhere, honestly, has over 460 rushing yards, averaging 9.9 yards attempt and 3 rushing touchdowns. He's averaging almost 10 yards per carry this season. These guys are going to have to be explosive, and they're going to have to try to win the battle on the outside of this Arkansas defense. Rush off the edge and rush off tackle. When you look at when Auburn attacks the edge and or tries to run off tackle, they have almost 600 of their rushing yards averaging over 6 yards per carry and 7 rushing touchdowns when attacking the outer edge of this front seven of defenses they faced. Now, also a really big key and really just a weird detail when running in the A gap on the left side of the line, Auburn's averaging 11 yards per carry with 4 rushing touchdowns on that left side A gap between the center and guard, man. They make a living right there. So if Arkansas can stop that, can funnel this Auburn rushing attack to the middle and stop that A gap rush off that left side, Auburn's going to be in some trouble. So, but Auburn for them, they cannot abandon the run. They can't fall. They can't, let early stops by Arkansas deter them from giving their playmakers a chance. And I feel like at times Auburn has gotten away from their game plan in the biggest games. And if you can just consistently feed the ball to Tank and Jarquez, it's eventually going to hit and it's going to keep you in the game. So take the pressure off of Nix, give the ball to Hunter and Tank, and let this Auburn offensive line and running back group eat up front. Now, the other key, of course, is going to be Bo Nix and which version of Nix that we get, which version of this junior signal caller that we're going to get coming to Fayetteville this weekend. He's going to have to avoid turnovers, which he's done well this year. He threw his first pick last week, and it wasn't even his fault. It was a tip ball by his running back, and Nakobe Dean just made a good play on it. But he's also going to have to match Jefferson's playmaking ability, which we have seen Nix can be one of the most dynamic playmakers. And you look at the LSU game as a prime example. Now, for Nix, he's thrown for over 1,200 yards, 6 passing touchdowns, 1 pick, like I said, and also has a rushing touchdown. Now, you might say, man, he's only completing like 50-something% of his passes. Well, a lot of his struggles and poor stat lines have come from poor wide receiving play. He's falling victim to almost 20 drops this season from his wide receiving core. And he's really played well these past 2 weeks, but the Tigers wide receivers have not helped him out. They had almost 10 drops last week against Georgia. Auburn probably would have been in a much better position in that Georgia game if the wide receivers would just hang on to some of these balls. He's going to have to build some chemistry and trust his wide receivers to go make plays this weekend. And he has to be able to make plays down the field off this run game because Arkansas is going to load the box, make this inexperienced wide receiving group beat them one-on-one outside. And if they can't do it, Auburn could be in for a very long day. So the key is to, one, establish the run, and then let Nix build off that and be the playmaker, downfield guy he is at that quarterback spot. Now, for the matchup to watch, I think it has to be the Arkansas offensive line against this Auburn front seven because, yes, the Tigers have to get a lot of pressure on Jefferson because that's how you get him out of his rhythm. But on the other side, the Razorbacks are going to have to win this so that way they can establish that run game that I mentioned earlier as one of the keys of the game. Now, the offensive line has done an excellent job protecting Jefferson and, like I said earlier, averaging over 240 on the ground per game. So they've done a great job at establishing the rushing attack. They've only allowed 6 sacks this season, 8 quarterback hits, and 39 pressures. That is an elite production 6 weeks into the season. Now, you look at this offensive line, the tackles, the redshirt seniors, the guys who have been in the trenches. Dalton Wagner is 6'9", 330, and Myron Cunningham, 6'6", 325. Cunningham has yet to allow a sack. Wagner's the other one of the highest graded offensive linemen on the Razorbacks. The tackle spot is the solid point of this Arkansas offensive line. They're going to have big games against the Auburn pass rush that has really come on strong as of late and has been improving game in and game out for the Tigers. Now, Ricky Stromberg at center is also one of the highly graded Arkansas offensive linemen, and he's only allowed 3 pressures all season. And why this is so important is when he's under pressure, KJ Jefferson is only completing about 50% of his passes, hit 1 interception, and his passing grade drops to a 57.3, which is much lower than what he has in a clean pocket. So if they can keep Jefferson calm, cool, collected, with a lot of time to make plays down the field against this Auburn secondary, that's going to be the key because at that safety spot, Auburn can be had. We saw Clifford take advantage of it. We saw we saw LSU take advantage of it in the first quarter, but then they kind of got away from it later in the game. So if they give Jefferson time, Arkansas's offense really goes to another level and really has the advantage going into this weekend. Now, for Auburn, though, the defensive line, like I said, has slowly improved game after game. They have 22 sacks this season and over 70 pressures in their first 6 games of the season, and they're going to have to replicate that this weekend against the Razorbacks. You look at Derek Hall, 4 sacks, 14 QB hurries. Iku Leota, 5 sacks. That leads the Tigers this season. He's the Northwestern transfer with a load of experience. These guys coming off the edge is going to be important. And then one of the leaders of this front seven, Colby Wooden, 3 sacks, 13 QB hurries, is the highest graded pass rusher on the Tigers defense. These guys are going to have to win the line of scrimmage, and they're going to have to find a way to stay disciplined in their rushing lanes and keep Jefferson corralled in the pocket, but also get to him. Even if you don't sack him, make sure you're getting that internal clock ticking a little bit faster than Jefferson likes and get him out of his comfort zone. And that's going to be a key for Auburn. The linebacking spot. We don't know exactly if Owen Papo is going to be back this weekend as of right now. I would imagine they're going to he probably be a game time decision. I'm hoping they let him suit up because he's really been a missing piece in this second level of this Auburn defense. Zakoby McLean is someone to watch. He was the SEC leading tackler last year. He's on that same pace this year. He is a key piece to this Auburn rushing defense, and then when he's in the game, he's a game changer. So Zakoby McLean and Owen Papo got to be big, especially if Papo plays. But that's going to be something to look forward to as game time approaches. But this Auburn front seven has to win this line of scrimmage battle. If they get blown off the ball and Arkansas does what they did to a Texas or a Texas A&M and win the line of scrimmage dominantly, Auburn's going to be in for a long day because Auburn does not have the secondary pieces to load the box and play one-on-one on the outside against some of these Arkansas wide receivers because Traylon Burks will probably have a very big day if that happens. Now, when I look at this matchup as my prediction, man, I've picked Arkansas every single game that we've covered them this season. Except for Texas and except for Georgia. So I'm 1-1 when I don't pick Arkansas. And for Auburn, I've picked against them every time I've covered them on this show. I know my Auburn people are like, I hate this podcast. What a horrible Auburn alum we got. But I'm always trying to be non-biased. I try to take this game by game, and I really had a tough time picking this game because I think these teams match up very, very well, and both of them are going to be desperate for a win. Last year, we saw a classic game. Arkansas really got robbed. Bo Nix spiked the ball backwards. It should have been a fumble. They didn't call it. Auburn escapes Jordan Hare with a win. When I'm looking at this matchup, I trust Auburn's front seven to make a stop against Arkansas more than I trust Arkansas to slow down Auburn's rushing attack with Tank Bigsby. And Tank was a little bit banged up in recent weeks. He's starting to look more similar to what I expected to see in the Georgia game. I'm expecting Tank Bigsby to be the MVP, make a play late, get Auburn into field goal range, and Anders Carlson make a late field goal for Auburn to pull off the upset. This is the first time I picked Auburn in probably 2 years on this podcast. I have Auburn pulling off the close upset 27-24 in Fayetteville. I think this one could go either way. I just trust the running backs at Auburn more than I do Arkansas. And I think the front seven for Auburn can make a stop more so than that Arkansas front seven. They just haven't looked the same since that Georgia game. Ole Miss ran through them. Georgia did too. I trust Tank Bigsby and Jarquez Payton down the stretch. So Tigers 27, Razorbacks 24. Guys, like the video, subscribe to the channel now. Hit that subscribe button right now and go ahead and comment your score predictions below and comment your takeaways on the game. And I know I'm going to be covering both these teams soon. This is going to be a great game. I actually might be in Fayetteville this weekend. So if you see me there, say what's up, man. Looking forward to meet any of the listeners on the show. But guys, we'll be back with another Week 7 preview this afternoon with a great SEC matchup of Ole Miss versus Tennessee. But for right now, man, the Blue Bloods are out.